Hi, I'm Lori Rozakis. Welcome to Video Aided Instructions Upgrade Your Writing series. This is the third program in the series, Overcoming Writer's Block. Well, what is writer's block? It's the inability to get your words down on paper. It usually occurs between planning and drafting, but it can occur at any time in the writing process. It can last only a few moments, or it can last far, far longer. It can cause great anxiety and problems in school, especially when it comes to writing on standardized or high-stakes tests. Professionals, as well as student writers, can suffer from writer's block. You've probably heard jokes about writer's block. People make funny lines about it and things, but there's really nothing funny at all about having an inability to write, especially when you're under pressure. So what are the main reasons for writer's block? Some people just don't know what they're writing about. They have a lack of subject knowledge. Other people have a fear of failure. Sometimes you experience writer's block because you're afraid of being rejected, or you're afraid that you have nothing to say. Perhaps you have the inverse. You're afraid of becoming a success, or you might be afraid of offending your audience. Some people experience only one of these blocks, and they experience it repeatedly, while other people are blocked for different reasons, depending on the writing situation. But don't worry about it. There are ways that I will teach you for you to overcome your writer's block, no matter what its cause. Let's start with the first reason, lack of subject knowledge. The problem is you've been given a writing assignment and you don't have any ideas, or you don't know enough about the subject that you've been assigned. How can you overcome writer's block in this instance? Well, first of all, start by becoming an active learner. Now, you can't obviously do that when you're in the middle of the writing situation, but you can do that as a general habit as you go through life. Ask questions, seek out knowledge. If you see a movie, go home and look up the movie, find out what the reviews were, find out what other people said, find out the background information. If you read a news story, do some research, find out other things about the background of the story. In other words, become engaged in the learning process. In addition, you can become a reader. Now, you don't have to read War and Peace every single day, sit there and slog through old novels. You can read a newspaper, you can read a magazine, you can read a novel, you can read nonfiction. But try to read every single day, at least for half an hour. Because by making reading a habit, you'll find out that you absorb a great deal of knowledge. This knowledge, of course, comes in very handy when you have to write, especially under pressure. Be a culture vulture, as I like to call it. In other words, go to movies, listen to the radio, watch television, find out what's going on around you, become aware of current events. You can surf the web, learn a lot of interesting stuff. Some of it's true, some of it's not, but at least you're keeping your mind active. You can research. Use reputable sources. You've probably heard about Wikipedia, which is an encyclopedia written by average people. After you've checked something on the web, be sure to check it in a reliable source, which is normally a print source. You can also socialize, spend time with other people, listen to what they have to say, engage them in conversation. You can keep a journal or a clip file. Professional writers tend to keep journals. They write down their thoughts, but they also clip out interesting articles from newspapers and magazines. And last, you can keep an online journal or a blog in which you interact with other people. So, to review, you can become an active learner, you can read daily, you can get involved with culture, surf the web, research, socialize, keep a journal, a print clipping, and keep a blog. All of these techniques will help you learn interesting things that you can then bring into your writing. And the more stuff you know coming in, the less likely you are to be blocked, because you'll have a lot of background information to start with. Number 2, perhaps you're blocked because you're afraid of failing. The problem is you're afraid that your essay won't be any good. You're afraid that you're going to get a poor grade, or that you'll look foolish in front of other people. And so you just don't write because you don't want these things to happen to you. How can you solve this block? Don't concentrate on what you're doing wrong. Instead, concentrate on what you're doing right. Don't beat yourself up. Be good to yourself as you're getting your ideas down on paper. Consider your paper as a first draft, not as a final copy. Write it quickly and then go back and revise it, because this will relieve a lot of your anxiety and make you less tense. Remember that everybody has the same fears. Nobody wants to look foolish. And that even though you think you may be the only one who is suffering this particular torment, the odds are most everybody else in the class is afraid of looking foolish as well. So don't beat yourself up about it, because it's a natural kind of fear. Concentrate on the good stuff that you're writing, and you'll find that a lot of your fear of failure will dissolve. Number 3, perhaps you're blocked because you have a fear of rejection. Writing, by its very nature, is an act of self-revelation. Even if you're writing about a nonfiction or a fiction or anything whatsoever, you're afraid that you're going to reveal something about yourself and how you feel about things. And if your writing isn't any good, or your teacher gives you a low grade, then you're going to feel rejected as well. The solution is, don't reveal your innermost thoughts. Adopt a persona or an identity that you use to write. So, for example, you may choose to imagine yourself as somebody different. You might imagine yourself as older. You might imagine yourself from a different culture. And when you adopt that persona, it will be easier for you to write, because you won't feel that you yourself are being rejected. In addition, try to choose a non-fiction rather than a fiction option if you have that choice. So if you're writing about penguins, for example, rather than telling your life story, the odds are you will reveal far less of yourself. Next, perhaps you're afraid that you have nothing to say. You're afraid that your writing is trite or your writing is boring. It won't be original. The teacher will have read it 100 times. And you're thinking, why should I even bother? Because if I'm going to say something not worth saying, I'm going to get a low grade. The solution is prepare thoroughly. Know your stuff, because if you've got a lot of detail, even if the teacher has read it before, it will be very interesting, because you will have that specific detail that the other writers did not. And you would prepare, of course, by doing your reading and doing your research. You can choose an unusual topic if you do have the option of choosing your own topic. For example, I once wrote a paper about eating insects. I'm not fond of insects in general, and I'm certainly not fond of eating them. But I did some research, and I found that in many other cultures, insects are eaten routinely. People eat crickets, people eat grasshoppers, people eat ants, people eat maggots. They fry them, they saute them, and they're considered quite a tasty treat. And so I wrote a paper on how to make chocolate chip grasshopper cookies, how to make fried grasshoppers, how to make fried crickets, and it was a very interesting paper to write and an interesting paper to read. And it relieved my writer's block because I had something a little bit different to say. Next, if you've got a common topic, take an uncommon approach. You might want to be a little bit contrarian. In other words, if everybody is saying it this way, you might want to say it the other way. So you're going to take something as commonplace as the cause of a war, for example, and argue, yes, that's valid, but let's look at it from an entirely different viewpoint. And that makes your topic and your paper far more interesting, and it gives you something good to say. I once had a student who argued that the driving age should not be lowered, but should be raised to 30, and that nobody under the age of 30 should be allowed to drive a car. I thought, what an interesting idea. I hadn't thought of 30. I thought of maybe 21 or 22, but never 30. And the writer made some very interesting points by citing accident statistics. And so I found the paper very, very interesting. Next, you might be afraid of being a big success because you're afraid that if you get A's on your papers, perhaps you'll be asked to do more and more writing, and you might not be up to that challenge. Or maybe if you get a lot of A's, your friends won't think you're very cool. And you don't want to stand out for being a writer. Perhaps you want to stand out for some other reason, because in some places it's not considered that cool to be that good academically. You know, of course, that it's very cool to be good academically. Your solution is, of course, if you have talent, be true to your talent. If you don't think you have talent, assume that you do anyway and work your hardest. Be true to yourself. If your friends are your friends, they will stick with you. And if they put you down for writing well, they're not really your friends anyway. Perhaps you're afraid of offending your audience. You're afraid that your writing will hurt other people, and in some cases your writing will hurt other people and it will offend other people. The solution is don't. Don't push the limits. Don't offend anybody. Choose a different topic. Or take a slant on the topic that you will not offend anybody, because you don't want to hurt feelings. There's no reason to do that, especially not in writing. Now, how do you break through writer's block other than the ways I've just discussed? Well, first of all, you should know that it tends not to be a chronic condition. It tends usually to be temporary. Most of the time, writers just need a little bit of a nudge to break through. So in this program, I'm going to teach you 16 more ways to cure writer's block. I'd like you to try them all. See which ones work best for you. Remember that some will work best in one situation, others will work best in others. You might find one technique works very well if you're taking a high-stakes standardized test, like an SAT or an ACT, whereas another technique might work a lot better for classroom writing. Be flexible. Try different techniques with different writing tasks. And again, you'll find out which ones work best for you. Here's our first technique. Use pre-writing techniques. You learn these in Program 1. To review briefly, a blank sheet of paper is very intimidating to all writers. So you want to get something useful written on it as fast as you can. So use those pre-writing techniques that you learned in the first program. Listing, webbing, charting, free writing, asking questions. So now what I would like you to do is to pause the program and pre-write about atoms by making a short list. Remember what you learned about listing. It's very important that you write down those numbers, because the act of writing down those numbers gets your brain in gear. And then the page is no longer blank because you've already started writing. So write down the numbers, perhaps number 1 to 5 or 1 to 10, and do some brainstorming about atoms. You may need to do a little bit of research, maybe use a science textbook, an online resource, or maybe a magazine or newspapers. When you're done, please come back. Here's my answer. I wrote for an overview, well, there's about 100 different kinds of atoms. Now, I'm not 100% sure, I'm not even 99% sure, that that's correct. There may be 90 kinds of atoms, there may be 150. I know there's a lot. So if I decide to use that overview, I'm going to go back and check those facts. But I got something down on paper, and that makes me feel good. Well, I know the word origin is correct. I've got the word comes from the Greek, atomos, which means indivisible. So I could develop my entire essay around the origin of the word atom. I like that one a lot. Then I decided to do the parts of the atom. Number 3, 4, 5, 6, I have electrons, neutrons, protons, and nucleus. I'm not 100% sure, again, that those are really parts of an atom, but I know those words are important and some of them are indeed parts. But at least I've got something down. I can always go back and check and make sure that my facts are indeed correct. So what I've done is I've figured out 3 different ways that I could potentially develop this essay. An overview of the different kinds of atoms, that's my number 1. The origin of the word atom, that's my number 2. And parts of the atom, number 3, 4, 5, and 6. Any one of these methods would help me develop my essay, and I've now broken through my writer's block and I've organized my essay. Now what I would like you to do is to try this pre-writing activity about atoms another way. This time, use the brainstorming method. It's similar to listing, but it isn't numbered, and it doesn't have to make that much sense. You're just trying to get your brain going, so you're jotting down ideas as you think of them. It's almost like a free association exercise. Don't worry about logic, don't worry about order. Just concentrate on generating ideas. Give yourself no more than perhaps 5 minutes, if that. Maybe you could do it in 2 or 3 minutes. But try to get down as much as you can. Then come back. Here's what I brainstormed. Periodic table. Each element has a symbol. E equals mc squared. Mass and energy are variations of each other. Fission. Laser light, the result of the atom's electrons giving off light energy as they jump back toward the nucleus. And laser light can be brighter than the sun. You'll notice that these topics are all over the place, but that's fine. You've broken through, you've gotten your ideas down. Now what you do is you choose the idea or the ideas that you want to develop into an essay. Remember, these are very low pressure ways of getting your ideas down, so you don't want to sit there and agonize over this. You just want to concentrate on opening your mind and getting it going. Looking at my list, lasers alone would make a wonderful topic. For example, what are the latest ways that lasers are being used in consumer electronics? How are lasers being used in medicine? How are lasers being used in research? So I would just take that one idea, the idea of lasers, branch off from that and do my entire essay based around lasers. You might do something on the periodic table, for example, or you might do something on Einstein, E equals mc squared. But I've got enough here that I could get at least 1 and maybe 2 or even 3 essays. Let's keep going. What I'd like you to do now is to use the webbing method of pre-writing. Now I'd like you to create a web about some important milestones in the history of our understanding of the atom. Again, you may need to do a little bit of research. Maybe use a science textbook, an online resource, or some other resource that you may have. When you're finished, come back. Notice that all the details in my web are on the same topic, milestones in the understanding of the atom. In the middle, I wrote milestones in understanding the atom. And I decided to go with 4 separate circles. My first one, I had John Dalton, 1808, Modern Atomic Theory. My second one, Amedeo Avogadro, 1811, he measured atomic mass. My third one, James Chadwick, in 1932, the existence of neutrons. And my last one, Murray Gell-Mann in 1963 and quark theory. I tried to parallel these because it was easier for me to write this way. So in each case, I have the person's name, the date, and what aspect of understanding the atom the person discovered or invented or created. And I kept it sort of loose because I wasn't, again, 100% sure that I understood every part of it. But I put down enough that I can now go look it up and I can organize my essay accordingly. So this particular method of brainstorming, this webbing, is a more focused way of getting my ideas down. Everything here has a scientist, a date, and the specific breakthrough. Also notice that I don't necessarily have a clear method of organization. I don't know where I'm going to do it, but by putting down the dates, I have actually put myself into a method of organization. I've got chronological. So just by doing this webbing, I actually formed my method of organization. I would start with 1808, then I would go to 1811, then I would go to 1932, then I would go to 1963. So it flows very logically. Webbing is especially successful if you already have an idea organized in your mind, but that's not always the case. The very act of webbing can help you come up with ideas as well as organize them. So you don't have to necessarily know exactly where you're going. I find webbing works very well for people who are good visual thinkers. People who are able to imagine things in their mind find that webbing helps them break through. Now, let's try the free writing method of pre-writing. Let's stick with our same topic, the components of the atom. When you free write, remember you just start writing. You don't worry about your grammar, you don't worry about your spelling, you don't run a spell check. The point is just to get something down. In real free writing, you never lift your pen or your pencil up from the page. If you run out of ideas, you just make loops. Try to keep writing, even if you're not really on focus, because the act of writing frees up your mind to generate ideas. Stay on the topic of atoms, and when you're done, come back. Here's my free writing. Atoms of different elements differ in the number of protons and electrons they have. Atoms also differ in mass. Atoms with more protons, such as uranium, which has 92 protons, tend to be larger than atoms with fewer protons, such as, and I didn't know the answers, so I put question marks. You'll notice that the underlined sentence doesn't fit. It really has nothing to do with my topic. But that's okay. I didn't censor myself. I left that in there. I don't know what I'm going to do with it. Maybe something, maybe nothing, but it's there. And as long as it's there, I might be able to work with it. Also notice I really couldn't remember any atom with fewer protons than uranium. And rather than stop and look it up, because I'm free writing, I just put in some question marks as a placeholder. Now I do remember, so I'll write lead, which has only 83 protons. Even if I didn't remember, once I've stopped free writing, I can go back to my source and I can look up what I need and fill it in the slot. I've got a direction now to my essay, and I've broken through my writer's block. Even if I just get 2 or 3 sentences down on paper, I've got enough there that I can branch off in different directions, and I can start planning and writing my essay. Finally, let's try to use the 5 W's and the H method of pre-writing, this time about the Chernobyl nuclear power plant disaster in 1986. Answer who, what, when, where, why, and how for this event. You may have to do a little bit of research. When you're finished, come back. Here's my 5 W's and the H. Under WHO, I have 47 workers died directly in the accident. As many as 9,000 people died from subsequent radioactive exposure. 300,000 people were resettled. Under my what, I have a chain reaction out of control at an atomic reactor. My when was April 26, 1986. Decades later, the land is still too radioactive to farm. Where? Well, it was the Chernobyl nuclear power plant in Pripyat, Ukraine. Why? The causes are still open to debate. We're not sure if it's a design flaw or human error or perhaps both. And how? The explosions, it was a huge fireball, broke open the protective casing on the reactor. Radioactive atoms were released into the environment, and they were felt all over the northern hemisphere. Notice that this form of brainstorming uses a great deal of detail. This is especially useful for people who like facts, who want to do research, or who know a topic in detail. It's also a very good method if you've got to write a research paper or any other specific kind of writing where you're going to need a lot of detail. This helps you get that detail down. And that way you can discover if you know it or you don't know it. Now, if you don't know it, you can always look it up. But if you are in a situation like a high-stakes test, perhaps, where you can't look it up, this tells you early on to leave that particular topic and go on to another one where you can get specific detail. This method is also very reassuring because it's specific. That helps break through writer's block because you see a lot of information on your page, and that reduces the panic that you may feel when you say to yourself, oh gosh, I can't write this, I don't know anything at all about the topic. Well, obviously you do because you have all this information down on your page. So now we've generated ideas for the same topic, atoms, in many different ways. You can now tell that there are a lot of great pre-writing techniques that you can use very simply and very easily to break through writer's block. Which ones are you going to use? Try them all, depending on your topic, your purpose, and your audience. So now what I would like you to do is pause the program and try this. Use one of the pre-writing techniques for this topic. Should teachers assign homework? Why or why not? You can use any one of the pre-writing techniques that you like. When you're finished, come back. Should teachers assign homework? Why or why not? I chose to use the pre-writing technique of charting. Here's what my chart looks like. Now remember, your pre-writing technique may be very different from mine, and it doesn't matter. As long as you got something down on paper that you can use, you have successfully broken through writer's block. My chart, on the left, I wrote the reasons why teachers should assign homework. Homework reinforces classwork. Homework checks understanding, and homework helps to cement skills. On the right, I wrote the reasons why not. Homework is a waste of time. Well, I can only come up with one reason why they shouldn't, but I have 3 reasons why they should. So now I think I'll probably develop this essay that teachers should assign homework. I've spent perhaps 2 or 3 minutes and I've broken through my writer's block by using pre-writing techniques. Number 2, brainstorm with a friend. It's often easier to discuss ideas with a friend or a group of friends than to try to sort of, have an artificial audience in your head or the one on your paper. So what you do is you sit down with your friend or your relative or your teacher and let your ideas flow freely. Try to, as we say, think outside the box. Take notes on what you've discussed. At this stage, don't throw out any ideas. Even if they sound really silly, jot them down anyway, because they help get you out of the block and into the zone, and that's what you want. Hold a discussion with yourself if no one else is around, addressing an imaginary audience. It's a lot of fun to sit around talking with friends. It's a lot more fun than it is to sit and write. So you want to be sure to keep this brief. You don't want to sit with your friends for 3 or 4 hours when you should be writing. Don't spend any more than 5 or 10 minutes, because after that, you've probably exhausted all of your ideas and you're just having a good time. Try it yourself. So now what I would like you to do is to pause the program and try this second technique. Brainstorm by having a conversation with a friend or even by yourself, and take notes to prepare to write an essay on this topic. Quote, "Animals are such agreeable friends. They ask no questions. They pass no criticisms." George Eliot. What is your position on this? Support your views with relevant reasons and examples from your experiences. Now, my notes, of course, are going to be different from yours. When you're finished, come back. Don't spend any more than about 3 to 5 minutes on this. Animals are such agreeable friends. They ask no questions. They pass no criticisms. That's your topic. Now, personally, I don't like pets. I've had pets, haven't found one that I like. I'm sort of one of those grouchy anti-pet people. So here's what I said to myself. Pets are dirty. They shed, they damage houses. Pets are dangerous. Dogs bite, cats scratch. And pets are expensive. They need shots and food. They get injuries and illnesses. Now, if you're a pet lover, you probably went exactly the other way, and you probably said that pets are great friends because they offer you love and they offer you affection and they never criticize you. But regardless of whether you like pets or you don't like pets, by having a conversation with a friend or a conversation with yourself, you've broken through writer's block and you've gotten your ideas down on paper. Technique 3 is change genre. Remember that a genre is a type of writing. Genre can be fiction, nonfiction, poetry, drama, and so on. If you don't have an assigned genre, change genre. So for example, if you are supposed to write an essay or you think you want to write an essay, perhaps you can recast that as a poem or a story. Now, even if you can't turn it in the recast form, if you write it briefly in the recast form, that will usually serve to unblock you. So for example, if you have to do an essay, you write it as a poem, then you redo it as an essay, you've gotten yourself back on track. So now what I would like you to do is a quick exercise in changing the way that you look at a topic. Imagine that you wrote this poem, but now you've got writer's block and you're stuck. Break through the writer's block by rewriting this poem as a short story. When you're finished, come back. Here's my story version. My shadow follows me all over the place. I don't think he's any good at all because he just jumps all around with me. But there's something really strange about my shadow, something eerie that I can't explain. Sometimes he grows very tall, but other times he's so tiny. Isn't that baffling? If that wasn't bad enough, my shadow doesn't even know how kids play. You make me look stupid, I tell him, because you don't give me any breathing room. It's like you're glued to me. If I were you, I said, I'd really be ashamed to be such a coward. Last Tuesday, I got up really early, so early that the sun hadn't even come up yet. It was pretty dark. Guess what I discovered when I went outside to play? My shadow wasn't there. He had left my side, likely staying in bed. I'm glad that he listened to me and decided to let me play all alone, but I did feel strange without him at my side. After all, before this, we had been inseparable. I wonder if he'll come back later when the sun comes up. Now, in my story version, I maintained the suspense of the poem. In the poem, the child doesn't realize that the reason the shadow isn't there is because there's no sun. The child also doesn't realize the reason why the shadow stays so close to him is because of the position of the sun in the sky. So I maintain that by saying things like, he grows very tall, but other times he's so tiny. Isn't that baffling? Because the child doesn't understand when the sun is straight ahead, directly above him, there's very little shadow. When the sun is on the side, there's a very long shadow. So I kept the suspense, I kept the humor, I kept the mystery, but I added some dialogue, and I added some different words to break through. By changing the poem to a story, I'm seeing things in a different way. This relieves my writer's block because it enables me to break through to a different genre. So whether I'm writing poetry or short stories or essays or paragraphs, it makes no difference. By recasting it in a different form, I'm able to look at the material in a different way. That helps relieve my tension and anxiety, and that relieves my writer's block. The same techniques will work for you. Try it yourself. What I'd like you to do now is pause the program and try this assignment. You may choose any genre that you like. Here's your topic. Great achievements involve great risk. Construct an argument explaining your position. As you develop your argument, support your position by providing at least 2 examples. Don't worry if your examples are different from mine. And when you're finished, come back. Great achievements involve great risk. I would recast this as a narrative, which is a story about somebody taking a risk and becoming a success. Or I could write a poem about a personal hero who took a risk and made the world a better place. What's very true about genre is that most of us, most of the time, write essays because essays are what are assigned in school. So if you try something that's not an essay, for example, a poem, even a song, you're going to find yourself being unblocked because you're using a different part of your brain. The same is true with technique number 4, change your point of view. Point of view is the position from which a story is told. The 3 main points of view are the first person, the third person omniscient, and the third person limited. The first person point of view is when the narrator is one of the characters in the story. The narrator explains events through his or her own eyes and uses the first person pronouns I and me. Third person omniscient. The narrator is not a character in the story, but rather looks through the eyes of all characters, using the pronouns he, she, and they. Omniscient means all-knowing. The third person limited is when the narrator tells a story through the eyes of only one character, using the pronouns he, she, and they. Most of the time, you'll be writing in the first person or the third person omniscient. Try switching them and see what happens. For example, Laura Ingalls Wilder, the woman who wrote the Little House books, was very, very blocked. She just couldn't get it down on paper. And the reason was she had written them in the first person point of view, using the I. And she found that she was much too close to the story because the first person didn't give her the distance that she needed to view the events of her life objectively. So she switched it to the third person limited, and that gave her the distance that she needed to tell her story. Here's an example from Pride and Prejudice. This is the original text. "My dear Mr. Bennet," said his lady to him one day, "have you heard that Netherfield Park is let at last?" By let, by the way, the author means rented. Mr. Bennet replied that he had not. "But it is," returned she, "for Mrs. Long has just been here, and she told me all about it." Mr. Bennet made no answer. "Do you not want to know who has taken it?" cried his wife impatiently. That's in the third person. Now we're going to rewrite that to the first person. We're going to make Mrs. Bennet the narrator. "My dear Mr. Bennet, I said to him one day, 'Have you heard that Netherfield Park is let at last?' Mr. Bennet replied that he had not. 'But it is,' I returned, 'for Mrs. Long has just been here, and she told me all about it.' Mr. Bennet made no answer. 'Do you not want to know who has taken it?' I cried impatiently. Now notice I left the Mr. Bennets the way they were. I could have changed them to "my husband." Now I'm going to change it to the first person with Mr. Bennet as the narrator. "My dear Mr. Bennet," said my wife to me one day, "have you heard that Netherfield Park is let at last?" I replied that I had not, because I wanted to tease my wife. "But it is," returned she, "for Mrs. Long has just been here, and she told me all about it." I still made no answer, to make her even more annoyed. I really enjoyed doing this to her. "Do you not want to know who has taken it?" cried my wife impatiently. Well, as you can tell, I made significant changes to this version. First of all, I used the "my wife" rather than Mrs. Bennet. Second of all, I added all this editorial comment. I replied that I had not, because I wanted to tease my wife. I still made no answer, to make her even more annoyed. I really enjoyed doing this to her. Now I've made significant changes to the story. Do I like this? Do I not like this? I don't really know, but I know that it's really served to unblock me, because it's freed me to deviate from my original text. So as I change point of view, I'm also changing different details as I continue to write. And this illustrates how changing point of view can help unblock you by freeing you to make all sorts of other changes in the text. Will you keep the changes? Will you not keep the changes? That's up to you down the line. But the important part is that you freed your imagination to express your ideas in several different ways. And so later on, you can go back and decide which way you're going to choose. So now what I would like you to do is pause the program and try this yourself. Choose a paper that you've already written. Rewrite one or two of the paragraphs from a different point of view. When you're finished, come back. How did this work for you? Obviously, your writing is your own, but sometimes rewriting something from a different point of view can help you overcome writer's block. I just want to add a warning here that's very, very important. Back in the old days, when Jane Austen wrote Pride and Prejudice, she sat there with paper and pen. So when she changed something, she would just cross it out or start a new sheet of paper. Today, with computers, what we tend to do is we keyboard over our documents, and that destroys the original document. If you're going to use this technique to break through writer's block, be sure to open different documents. So call it, for example, version 1, version 2, version 3, and so on. Don't re-keyboard over it, because you might decide you like version 2 better than version 4, and if you've re-keyboarded it, you don't have it. Or, and you can simply print out each version as you try it. But be sure to keep copies of that, because you're going to take perhaps a little bit of this and a little bit of that. Technique 5, set aside your word count. Most essays require you to produce 350 to 500 words. That's a lot of words. Having to write so much can be very intimidating, which can lead to writer's block. Instead, set yourself a small goal, such as writing 50 to 100 words. Concentrate on writing just that amount. Then reread what you've written. write 50 more words. Then write 50 more words. Before you know it, you'll have the number of words that you need. Try it yourself. Okay, I'm not going to ask you to write a 500-word essay right now, but I would like you to pause the program and try this technique for breaking through writer's block. Start by writing only 50 words on the following assignment. Trace the causes and the effects of King Philip's War. Imagine that this is just the start of a 500-word essay. You will have to do a little bit of research, of course, because very few of us know about King Philip's War. So do a little bit of research and then write your first 50 words. Of course, your paragraph is going to be different from mine. Try it now. Here's what I wrote. It's 57 words. In 1675, after more than 50 years of peace, war erupted between the Native Americans and English colonists in New England. Although people consider King Philip's War a mere footnote, when they consider it at all, in percentage terms, more people were killed in King Philip's War than in the Civil War or the American Revolutionary War. Now I'll add 50 more words, and then 50 more words, and soon I'll have 350 to 500 words. Technique number 6, start with the easiest part. If you can't start writing the first paragraph, start at the end, or the middle, or anywhere else in the essay for that matter. Choose the part that's easiest to write in your given writing situation. You can usually go back and write the rest of the essay, but if you can't, at least you've got something down on paper. This technique breaks through writer's block by relieving a lot of the anxiety that you might feel because you say, well, I don't have anything to write, I don't know what I'm talking about. If you start with what you do know, you'll be able to get something down on paper. Try it yourself. So now what I would like you to do is to pause the program and try this yourself. Suppose you were given a 350 to 500 word essay assignment on this topic. What do you think caused the dinosaurs to disappear from Earth? You're instructed to present at least 2 different theories. But I don't want you to start at the beginning with the introduction. Just write one of the middle or ending paragraphs instead. Remember, your paragraph will be different from mine. And when you finish, come back. I started in the middle with one of the theories. Here's what I wrote. In 1980, Luis Alvarez and his son Walter theorized that the dinosaurs disappeared when an asteroid collided with Earth 65 million years ago. They argued that the asteroid penetrated the Earth's crust, scattering dust and debris into the atmosphere that blocked most of the sunlight for months and lowered the planet's temperature. In addition, the asteroid caused huge fires, fierce storms, tsunamis, and volcanic eruptions. In turn, these disasters increased the amount of toxic compounds in the Earth's atmosphere. This would have made the planet inhospitable for the survival of the dinosaurs. Later, I'll go back and write the introduction and the rest of my essay. Technique number 7. Try a different method of transcription. Transcription is the way you actually get your ideas down on paper. Shake things up. If you usually write on a computer, write longhand. If you usually write longhand, write on a computer. If you write with a pen, try a pencil or vice versa. You might even want to use a tape recorder. Try it yourself. So now what I would like you to do is pause the program and try this method. Use a different method of transcription than you usually use to write this topic. Historically, trade routes have a significant impact on the development of a culture. Agree or disagree. When you're finished, come back. Since I always write on a computer, and I have for many years, I wrote my answer longhand in pencil. This helped me overcome writer's block because I'm using a different set of muscles and a different part of my brain. And you can try this over and over again with different writing tools. Technique 8, set a timer. Set aside a specific amount of time to write. Actually use a timer. It can be the timer on your cell phone, it can be the timer on your watch, it can be an egg timer. Start with a small amount of time, say 15 to 20 minutes. Don't get up until that time is done. Force yourself to write at least notes on the assignment. If you have a deadline for school, set the timer for 15 to 20 minutes per hour. This helps you deal with procrastination as well as writer's block, because one of the big problems when you get writer's block is you procrastinate. You feel blocked so you don't write. So now what I would like you to do is pause the program and try this yourself. Write for 5 minutes on this topic. A classic is something that everybody wants to have read and nobody wants to read, said Mark Twain. Discuss what you think makes a book a classic. Support your position by providing at least 2 examples of books that you think everyone should read. Of course, your writing will be different from mine. When you're finished, come back. Here's what I wrote in 5 minutes. Everybody knows about Shakespeare's Romeo and Juliet, but many people have not actually read it. They should, because the tragedy teaches timeless lessons about love and family. What Shakespeare said more than 400 years ago has an eerily modern ring to it. A teenage couple falls in love but are forbidden to marry because their parents are feuding. By forcing myself to write for just 5 minutes and simply getting something down on paper, I'm a lot less likely to suffer from writer's block. Technique 9, visualize yourself writing. When you visualize, you get a mental picture, a picture in your brain of something. And you can imagine yourself succeeding or you can imagine yourself failing. If you imagine yourself succeeding and you visualize yourself writing, you are much more likely to break through writer's block. And here's how you do it. Sit at a desk and get ready to write. Close your eyes. Actually imagine yourself writing. See yourself in your mind's eye writing. Do this for about 1 minute. Now 1 minute doesn't sound like a long amount of time, but when you're visualizing it is. Then open your eyes and start to write. Don't make this an excuse for not writing. Try it yourself. So now what I would like you to do is pause the program and try this yourself. Read this topic. Then take a few minutes to close your eyes and imagine yourself writing about it. A man may die, nations may rise and fall, but an idea lives on, John F. Kennedy said. Write a short paragraph about this topic. When you're finished, come back. Now, it's hard to show visualization. I mean, I'd have to show a picture of myself going and imagining, but I hope this technique worked for you. If it did, continue to use it. And if it didn't, try other techniques. But try it again occasionally to see if it works with a specific topic. It works very well with athletes. And so you might find that it may not work with you in one instance, but it will work with you in another. Technique number 10, eliminate distractions. When you're blocked and you don't want to write, it's very easy to find the things to distract you. So try to get rid of those things. For example, if you're in class, don't sit near people who distract you. Don't sit near the window, so you're not going to look outside. Try to sit in front of the room, because you'll do better if you sit in front of the class. If you're home, try as hard as you can to set aside a quiet place to write. Turn off the television. Turn off the video games. Turn off all the music or play it very softly. Turn off your cell phone. And get all the pets out of your room. Anything that's going to distract you from your writing task. Again, if you're blocked, it's easy to find things to distract. I'm not going to have you pause the program and try that, because you know how to do that. If you don't have a quiet place in your home, try to use a study hall or the library or anywhere where you can eliminate distractions and get your writing done. Technique 11, develop rituals. Writing is a skill, and like any other skill, gets easier and better with practice. So if you make writing a regular habit, like exercise, you'll find that you're blocked much less often. Set up some rituals that tell your brain that it's time to write. Some people, and I'm one of them, will buy a new pen or a new pad when I have a new assignment to tackle. So I have my new implements in front of me, and I'm all ready to start my new writing. Or set up a study center. Sit in the same place at the same time every day. You might want to eat a specific snack before you start writing. Maybe you have a cup of coffee or a cup of tea or a cup of juice or a glass of milk. You might want to sharpen your pencils. Whatever it is that tells your brain that it's time to write. I'm not going to have you develop a ritual now, but keep in mind that if you make writing a habit and you have a set pattern, you'll find it's much less likely that you'll become blocked. Technique 12, shake up an existing ritual. If you usually write at a specific place at a specific time every day and you're finding that you're getting blocked, try varying your routine. If you sit in a classroom, for example, maybe the teacher will let you change your seat. Perhaps sitting in the same place is causing you to have difficulty writing. So leave your usual place and try something different. Maybe try the library, maybe try the cafeteria, maybe try lying on the floor. Sometimes your brain thinks about your writing assignment differently when you shake up your location. If you normally write in the evening, try getting up very early and write early in the morning. So for some people, setting up a ritual and sticking to it helps them unblock. Whereas for others, the ritual creates a block and makes it difficult for them. So decide which one works for you if you're blocked. Try the variation. I'm not going to have you try it now, but you know you would try to change your seat or you would try to change the time in which you write. Technique 13, take human bites. If you have a huge writing task, such as a research paper, break it into smaller chunks. Don't sit down on Tuesday if the paper's due on Thursday and say, I'm going to write my entire paper tonight. Be realistic. Make an outline. And then make a schedule and stick with it. So for example, if you have a month to write your paper, the first night perhaps you want to make a preliminary outline to decide where you're going to take your ideas. The second, third, fourth, maybe you want to do your research. Then you're going to refine your outline. Then you're going to start taking notes. If you set up a schedule and you have realistic goals, you're going to find it much easier to keep on task. Technique 14, get help. You may have writer's block because you don't understand the topic. So what do you do in that case? Well, If you're in class, you can ask the teacher for clarification in the class or during extra help before or after school. You might get a peer tutor, someone your own age. You might go to the resource room. You might ask a parent or a sibling. Or you could restate the topic in your own words to check your understanding. I strongly suggest that you always start by asking the teacher, because the teacher's job is to help you understand the topic. And sometimes you'll be blocked just because you don't understand maybe something as simple as one word. A word could be used as a noun and a verb, and you're not understanding which way it's being used. Ask the teacher and then rephrase it in your own words to make sure that you understand what the teacher is saying. I'm not going to go over this, I'm not going to give you time to do it, but think about assignments that you've had and how you've gotten help in the past and which techniques have worked the best for you and why. Technique 15, use relaxation techniques. Some people, when they get writer's block, get so upset they may break out in a cold sweat, they may start shaking, they may get sick to their stomach, they may actually be so uncomfortable or ill they cannot proceed. This is especially true for high-stakes tests, for example, an SAT essay exam. If this is something that you've had problems with, use these classic techniques. I wish I could take credit and tell you I invented them. I did not. They're used in many, many different areas, so I know that they work. Start by breathing deeply. Close your eyes. Take 4 or 5 short, deep breaths. Hold each breath as long as you can and then let it out slowly. What you're doing is you're calming yourself down by breathing deeply. Don't do it more than 4 or 5 times. Number 2, stretch. If you can't stand up because you're taking a test, just tense your muscle and relax it for a second, because then you're telling your body to calm down. Number 3, visualize a very soothing scene. It might be the beach, it might be the mountains, something that when you put yourself there, you'll calm down. Use a calming word. Don't command yourself. Don't say, calm down, relax, snap out of it, because that's just going to make you more tense. Just pick a word, pick a sound that calms you down. I strongly suggest that you combine 2 or 3 of these. For example, take the deep breaths while you're visualizing a calming scene. Take the deep breaths, visualize the calming scene, and say the calming word. And don't forget, sometimes you can leave the assignment for a while. So for example, you might be able to address another part of the test and then return to the part that is making you so tense. This isn't procrastination. This is just giving yourself a fresh perspective. You should be able to calm yourself down within a few moments. Also on this, if you know you're going to have a very high stakes test, you know that you're going to get very tense, be sure to eat a little bit, even if you don't normally eat. Do not go in an empty stomach, and stay away from caffeine. Don't have a coffee, a grand latte mocha kind of thing. It will make you much more tense. So eat something, have something in your stomach, and concentrate on calm, calm, calm. Next technique, reward yourself. Writing is not a burden. Writing is not a punishment. Writing should be a pleasure. Make it fun for yourself. Be nice to yourself. Reward yourself for finishing a certain amount of an essay. You might want to call a friend. You might want to chat for a moment. You might want to play a video game. You might want to listen to music. You can surf the net. You can have a healthful snack. You can get some exercise. Now, I'm not saying write 5 minutes, an hour on the phone. Write 5 minutes, an hour on the phone. I'm saying write an hour, 5 minutes on the phone. But don't make writing something that is so scary and awful and punitive that you make it unpleasant for yourself. Well, we've come to the end of our program. I hope that you found this instruction helpful and that you've learned some things that you can use to take your written communication to the next level. Be sure to join us in the next program in Video Aided Instructions Upgrade Your Writing series, Crafting Sentences, where you'll learn useful ways to improve your sentences. Thanks for watching.
When you're serious about learning an academic subject or scoring high in a test, there's just one name to know: Video Aided Instruction. We don't waste your time with goofy skits, corny jokes, or silly sing-alongs. We get right to the point. Real teaching by real teachers. Visit us online at videoaidedinstruction.com to learn more about our exciting line of educational programs. As we say here at Video Aided Instruction, press play to learn.
Many students positively dread research paper assignments. Those hours and hours spent fruitlessly hunting for the right books and articles, squinting at screens of irrelevant search engine results, and scribbling useless notes on disorganized scraps of paper. But writing a research paper doesn't have to be such a stressful, time-consuming, and boring ordeal. Video Aided Instructions Writing a Great Research Paper series is your step-by-step guide to constructing a paper that's technically correct, refreshingly original, and truly compelling. With this user-friendly series, you can recognize the value of true scholarship, master essential research techniques, learn the insider secrets that the best writers know, dramatically improve your writing, and keep yourself motivated, productive, and relaxed throughout the entire process. Be sure to view the complete 10-DVD series: Picking an A-plus topic, Starting your research, Finding the best sources, Plagiarism and other pitfalls, Taking notes, How to be persuasive, Writing your first draft, Quoting, citing, and paraphrasing, Formatting your paper, and perfecting your final draft. Now you can successfully meet the challenge of writing a great research paper and earn a grade you can be proud of with Video Aided Instruction. Do you want to get your GED? Well, you're in luck. Video Aided Instruction makes it easier than ever before. Our one-of-a-kind series prepares you for even the toughest questions on the 5 GED tests. Be sure to view GED Language Arts Reading, Language Arts Writing, Mathematics, Science, Social Studies, and Calculator Essentials. Let us guide you toward that all-important diploma, a better job, and of course, higher self-esteem.